All right, so hopefully we go without some interruptions this time, because I've tried to do this video 3 times and I hate unknown callers. Fucking hate them. Anyway, so if you guys remember, not too long ago, Godzilla, IDW and Godzilla did this storyline called Monster Piece Theater, where it had Godzilla crossover with a bunch of in public domain characters. And in here, I kind of thought I haven't read it because I'm waiting for trade, and I'm going to do a video with Matt Denian on it. But basically, in there, Godzilla fought a bunch of in public domain book characters, and a lot of them for Britain. So I kind of thought to myself one day, what if we did a story of like Godzilla fighting America's Tall Tales? So that's hence the story, Godzilla Tall Tales, where like Godzilla is doing battle or encountering all of America's old American tall tales, like all of the like Paul Bunyan, Johnny Appleseed. You see what I'm saying? So let's get started. So in the vein of if this was a comic book, like if we were doing a story that is like a comic book, what we're basically going to be talking about is like how I'd set it up is like the through line is that Godzilla, this story of him, is like a lost American legend. And in here, like the narrator is like some Sam Elliott character who's just like, America was built on stories. Some good, some bad. But there's one story that never gets talked about, and I feel like it's time. That story is when Godzilla came to America. So it's like a tall tale. Like, that's the through line. So the first part of this story involves Godzilla encountering Captain Stormalong. If you don't know who that is, that's fine. He's basically Paul Bunyan, like if he was a sea captain instead of a woodsman. And in here, Godzilla is essentially... Godzilla is essentially just kind of like chilling at the bottom of the ocean, just sleeping, when Stormalong, his whole thing is that he likes to like fish for whales and sea monsters and wrestle them and shit, because that's just the kind of character he is. And Captain Stormalong's out in the ocean, and he hooks Godzilla's sail and like just tugs at him. Now Godzilla, of course, is just chilling at the bottom of the sea, and he's just like, someone wants to fight. I can do that. So Godzilla goes up to back to the surface, finds Stormalong there, and he's just like, yeah, I'm gonna go fight this thing. And Godzilla's just like, you picked the wrong fucker for this fight. So for 3 days, Stormalong and Godzilla do battle until eventually Stormalong is like thrown at the feet of the city, on like the shores of Boston, leading to Godzilla, roaring and announcing that I'm here, bitches, and proceeds to just destroy Boston and start his trek across the 1800s Americas, as he's like just trouncing along, and the narrator continues the story. So in this story, the next person he encounters is John Henry. He encounters him, and it's actually during the middle of his tale where John Henry is like hammering away to build that rail engine through that mountain, and he's battling that steam engine. Well, they're in the middle of it, and Godzilla not only just destroys the mountain, but like stomps on the steam engine as well, and he doesn't even care. Like, it's just like, it was in my way, I'm going to smash through it. So as Godzilla's like just going along, he hears a voice go, "Hey, get back here!" And Godzilla's just like, what? Who the fuck you think you're talking to? So he turns around, and like John's shaking his hammer at him, like, hey, that was a fair match between me and that steam engine you just destroyed. And everyone's just like, John, let it go. It's a giant fucking monster. Let it go. You won. And John's like, that ain't the point. Like, the whole thing is, someone else is just, like, I was supposed to prove that we are still needed by this company. You've just, that big dumbass up there just ruined our livelihood. Like, they're just gonna say, well, we can just build another one and we'll lose all our jobs. So I have to prove, and what better way to prove that we're still valuable is if I beat this big monster. So the narrator would go like John points to another bigger mountain, and he like points and goes, "You and me are going to dig through that mountain, and whoever comes out on top is going to be the winner. I win, you have to mosey along. But if I lose and you win, you can destroy the town. You're going to kill us anyway. Might as well try something." So the narrator would go, "Now Godzilla couldn't speak, but he understood a challenge when it arose." So that's the match. That's the kind of story we're dealing with here, is that Godzilla and John Henry are like plowing through this mountain, and of course Godzilla wins because it's Godzilla. So Godzilla goes through the mountain, but by the end of it, John is dying. Because like in this story, where in the original one it was like all the ash and soot got in his lungs and it killed him. Here, it was like he was so close to Godzilla and fighting so hard to keep up with him that the radiation from Godzilla poisoned him. So, yeah, he dies of radiation poisoning. And in that moment, Godzilla like looks and all the people are weeping for John. And by the end of it, Godzilla's just like, and leaves. And in that story, like the narrator I'd have the narrator go, "Yeah, well, sir, I can't really tell you why Godzilla left that town alone, or left them people alone to grieve for John. Some people say that he just got bored. Others say he didn't find worth the time of day. But if you ask me, I think Godzilla honored that man." So there you go. That's the story of Godzilla fighting John Henry Iron. I almost said John Henry Iron. John Henry. So the next one the next tall tale Godzilla encounters is Pecos Bill. He's just kind of roaming across. He's gone from he went down to the south and is now going through Texas. So this is where he encounters Pecos Bill, and Pecos Bill is in the middle of like hog tying a tornado because he could do that. Why could he do that? Doesn't fucking matter. That's how the story goes. So Godzilla is just like, and is just kind of walking through, just destroying towns as he goes through. And Pecos Bill is just kind of like, "Well, look at that. If I could hog tie that big old bitch, I'd sell him to a circus." Why a circus? Again, that's how the story would probably go. So Pecos Bill chases on horseback Godzilla and like runs up his tail and like tries to like lasso him. So Godzilla's like trying to fight a gnat this whole time. Like he's just blasting everything, making holes for rivers. His roar and stomps would make would make new landmarks in Texas, things like that. And by the end of it, Pecos Bill is like, "Well, I know when I'm whipped. Carry on, monster." And like waves his hat at him, and Godzilla's just like, whatever, and keeps going. The next tall tale Godzilla encounters is Johnny Appleseed, and this is where we encounter another monster from Toho. You might guess who it is by now, but we'll get to her in a minute. So Godzilla is just destroying land everywhere he goes, and his radiation and he's just stomping through and ends up destroying a massive apple orchard that Johnny Appleseed had made. And Johnny is just like in devastation because he's like, "I can't do anything against that." So what does he do? He's like, the narrator goes, "Now Johnny was no by means a praying man, but in that moment he knew he needed divine intervention. So he got on his knees and prayed to whatever God was listening for 2 days. Now I can't say what come out of the earth was an angel, but it was what answered Johnny's prayers." And sure enough, it's Biollante. So, yeah, Biollante's now in this story. Now, why is Biollante here? You may be thinking, that doesn't add up in the timeline. Fuck you, that's why. Yeah, it's a tall tale. Doesn't fucking need to make fucking sense. So, Godzilla, so Johnny and Godzilla, and getting tongue-tied, Johnny and Biollante team up and fight Godzilla. So as the two are like doing battle, the more and Godzilla does win the fight against Biollante, but Johnny is like sad that he lost Biollante. But what he does discover is that during the fight between the two monsters, is that Biollante's plant life her spores gave life to new apples and new fruit, and like basically gave life and even grew whole forests for the American people coming further out west to like build houses and things like that to thrive. And that's what makes Johnny happy by the end of it. But but we're now coming to the end of the story, and you were probably guessing when this guy was going to show up. Our finale is Godzilla doing battle with Paul Bunyan and Babe. So as Godzilla's like making his way to like the redwoods, Paul Bunyan is already there, like chopping redwoods down with Babe at his side, and Godzilla just destroys the logging company Paul's a part of. And Paul's just like, hey, you big dumb lizard. That's, that there's my job. And Godzilla's just like, Godzilla's just like roars at him and is like blasting all of the trees out of his way. And Paul proceeds to like take his axe and try to whack Godzilla with it. So Godzilla gets struck by it and he's like, oh, it's on. So Paul and Babe do battle with Godzilla for 3 weeks. And for 3 weeks they would just literally terraform the landscape in their fight. Like Godzilla like grabs Babe and just like smashes his head into the ground and makes like the fucking lake in Montana. I can't remember what it's called, but you guys know. So by the end of it, Godzilla and Paul are fighting, and their fight goes to what would be Yellowstone National Park, where there's this massive hole, and Paul grabs Godzilla and chucks him into this hole, and then him and Babe bury it. So, but the injuries Paul and Babe sustain, they die. Yeah, this does not end in a happy story. And the narrator goes, now if you're wondering about old Godzilla, if you ever go to Yellowstone National Park and you go to that old faithful geyser, they may say it's a geyser, but if you listen real closely, you can hear Godzilla's roar. And it would show, like, if this was a comic, like Godzilla is the old faithful geyser, and he's just roaring, and every time his roar happens, water spews up. And the narrator says, one day he's gonna get out of that hole. And I think we're all going to be in some serious trouble when that happens. So there you go, guys. That is Godzilla Tall Tales. Hope you all enjoyed this. Just comment below. Let me know what you thought of it. I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the Multiverse.